I'm Erica Bakersfield, 32, and I built a stable life from the ground up, organized, debt-free, the one everyone could count on. For years, I covered rent, booked trips, and bailed my family out without being asked. But when my own mother told me I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding after I'd paid for their honeymoon, I made a choice that shifted everything. Ever been shut up by the very people you showed up for? If so, drop your story in the comments. You're not the only one. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever drawn a line after being taken for granted, hit like and subscribe for more real stories about standing tall and letting go. Because what happened next, no one saw coming. My name is Erica Bakersfield, and for most of my adult life, I've been the reliable one in my family. The planner. The fixer. The one you could text at 11:42 p.m. when the basement flooded or the credit card got declined at the pharmacy. And I'd show up, sometimes literally, sometimes with just a phone call and a payment confirmation number, without complaint. That's how I was raised. If you could help, you helped. If you had more, you gave more. It wasn't always like that. As kids, my sister Gemma and I were close in that quiet, built-in best friend kind of way. We'd share clothes, homework, inside jokes. She was the louder one, the confident one. I was the careful one, the peacemaker. We fought, sure, what sisters don't, but the bond felt solid. Like no matter what happened out there, we'd have each other. Back then, I never imagined we'd grow up and end up on opposite ends of a wedding guest list. Our family wasn't dysfunctional in the dramatic, Lifetime movie kind of way. More subtle than that. My mom, Nancy, was a dental receptionist who ran the household like a front office. Efficient, always slightly stressed, full of passive-aggressive optimism. My dad left when I was 9. Gemma was 7. He called on birthdays for a few years, then stopped. Mom kept us afloat, but I grew up knowing I had to make things easy for her. I didn't throw tantrums. I got good grades. I didn't need reminding to do my homework or my laundry. I just handled things. Even when I was still too young to realize that not every child feels responsible for the emotional climate of their house. That sense of responsibility never really left. In college, when Mom's car broke down, I dipped into my student loan refund to cover the repairs. After graduation, when Gemma got laid off from her marketing internship, I let her crash on my couch for 3 months, rent-free. When Mom's rent went up and she hinted about how crazy inflation is getting, I started sending her a little money each month. Just to help. No discussion. No strings. That was the unspoken agreement. Erica handles it. Gemma leaned into her freedom, as she should have. She backpacked through Europe after college, then bounced around from city to city chasing the next, better opportunity. I stayed in one place. Built a career in operations for a mid-sized tech firm. Put money in savings. Paid off my car early. I didn't resent her for any of it. I figured that was just the balance. I'd be the stable one. She'd be the dreamer. Families have a way of locking people into roles and calling it love. When Gemma got engaged to Aaron last year, I was genuinely happy for her. Not the polite kind of happy, actual joy. I liked him. He was grounded, funny, good to her in all the ways that matter. I remember thinking, finally, she's found her anchor. The engagement was simple, no grand proposal, just the two of them deciding over dinner that they were ready. Classic Gemma. Casual, off-script, no pressure. She called me that night, practically humming through the phone. We're doing this, Lore. It's really happening. I offered to help. Not in the Pinterest board, flower arrangement kind of way. I know my lane. I offered to take care of logistics, vendor deposits, contracts, travel planning. Anything they needed that was less glamorous but crucial. Gemma thanked me and said she'd think about it, but a week later, Mom called and asked if I could manage the honeymoon planning. They're just swamped, she said. And you're so good at that stuff. So I did. Quietly. Thoroughly. Over the next 2 months, I spent hours comparing flights, reviewing Airbnbs, checking cancellation policies. I researched visa rules and honeymoon registry etiquette. I fronted deposits where necessary. I made a spreadsheet. I'm not even sure Gemma knew how much of it I handled. I didn't keep a tally. But it added up. $9,400 by the time I was done. The flights were booked under their names, including one for our mom, who I thought deserved a little adventure after years of just getting by. A thank you gift she never asked for. It wasn't about recognition. I truly believed that when you love people, you invest in their joy. There was never a moment where I questioned whether I was doing too much. It felt automatic. I'd always taken care of things. Why should this be any different? Still, there were hints that something had shifted. Group texts started to go quiet on my end. Wedding conversations happened without me. Gemma would mention bridesmaid meetings I hadn't heard about, then quickly change the subject. I told myself not to take it personally. Planning a wedding is chaotic. People get overwhelmed. I was the oldest sibling, not the most glamorous one. Maybe they thought I wasn't interested in color swatches and centerpiece debates. When I asked about travel plans, Mom brushed it off. Oh, they're still figuring things out. You know how young couples are. But there was a hesitation behind her words. A pause that didn't belong. I should have seen it sooner. The missed calls that didn't come. The way Gemma stopped asking me for advice. The way our mom, who used to update me on everything, down to what brand of almond milk Gemma preferred, suddenly seemed vague and overly cheerful whenever the topic of the wedding came up. Still, I didn't push. I figured my role was behind the scenes. Pay the bills. Make things easier. Keep quiet. Be the grown-up. It wasn't until 3 weeks before the wedding that the facade cracked. We were on a video call, the three of us, me, Gemma, and Mom. I'd called to confirm some final flight info and make sure they had everything they needed for the honeymoon itinerary. The mood was casual. Gemma looked distracted, sipping something out of a mason jar. Mom was smiling too much. I remember her tilting her head, saying she had something to tell me, and for some reason my stomach tightened before she even spoke. We talked it over, she said, her voice light, almost rehearsed. And we think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. It took a second to register. Wait. What? Gemma didn't look at me. She was staring off screen. It's not personal, she added. We just think it'll be a more relaxed atmosphere if it's a smaller group. Less tension. Tension. Mom jumped in. You know how emotions can get. We just want a smooth day. No drama. I wanted to ask what I had done. What tension they were talking about. But something in their expressions told me the decision had already been made. This wasn't an oversight. It was a choice. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I nodded once. Said, good to know. Then I ended the call, opened my laptop, and transferred the honeymoon fund back into my account. Canceled the flights. Sent an email to the Airbnb host and ate the non-refundable deposit. It was a quiet process. No announcements. No revenge fantasy. Just closure. By morning, I had 39 missed calls. And one message that would change everything. A network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help.openai.com. 2 weeks before the wedding, I called my mom to confirm flight details. It was a quick check-in, something routine. I'd already booked her ticket, economy with seat selection, early boarding, and a carry-on included. I was just making sure she'd received the itinerary email. I expected her to say thanks, maybe mention something about packing or how excited she was. Instead, there was a pause on the line, longer than necessary. Actually, she said slowly, there's something we need to talk about. I remember looking at my phone confused. We. I repeated. She cleared her throat. Gemma, me, the girls, we talked it over. And we think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. There was no anger in her voice. No defensiveness. Just the kind of overly polite tone people use when they're canceling a dentist appointment or returning a sweater they never liked. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. My first thought was that she'd misspoken. That maybe she meant the rehearsal dinner or some private bridal moment, not the entire wedding. But she didn't correct herself. My voice stayed steady. Why? She let out a little breath, the kind that usually came before she said something she'd already practiced. We just think your energy isn't right for the day, she said. Then added, like she was proud of the phrasing, we want it to be positive. I could hear Gemma's voice in that sentence. It had her cadence. her careful avoidance of specifics, her habit of framing everything as emotional wellness, even when it was just cruelty in soft language. Still, I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "Good to know," and ended the call. The silence in my apartment afterward felt suffocating. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, one hand still holding the phone, the other resting on the countertop like it was keeping me from tipping over. I hadn't even been expecting much from the wedding. No big role. No speech. I'd quietly removed myself from most of the process weeks ago. But being excluded outright, by my own mother and sister, hid in a place I didn't even realize was still tender. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started unspooling the logistics. Canceling the honeymoon itinerary I had pieced together with obsessive care. Each flight confirmation number, each booking reference, each carefully selected upgrade. I moved methodically. Refund what could be refunded. Absorb the loss on what couldn't. Transfer the $9,400 back into my account. I didn't tell them. No dramatic text. No petty email. Just a quiet reversal of every gift I had planned to give. It wasn't until the next morning that my phone started lighting up. First a text from Gemma, "Can you call me?" Then another, "We didn't mean for it to come out like that." By noon, I had 39 missed calls, Gemma, Mom, a couple of cousins I hadn't spoken to in months. One from Erin. The voicemail that stopped me was from my Aunt Karen, my mom's sister. Her voice was low and clipped. "Erica, I don't know what happened, but whatever you did has everyone in a panic. Your mom is calling everyone trying to fix something, and Gemma is crying. I'm staying out of it, but maybe call them back before this turns into a bigger mess." That was the moment I realized they hadn't expected consequences. They had decided I wasn't the right energy for the wedding. And then, quietly, without fanfare, I had removed the gifts, the bookings, the support they had taken for granted. I had withdrawn, not from the wedding, but from the fantasy that I was the safe one. The reliable one. The one who would keep showing up no matter how many times they failed to show up for me. What I didn't expect was what came next. Not from them, but from someone I never thought would weigh in at all. A message that changed everything. That night, after I hung up the phone, I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I didn't even tell anyone what had happened. I opened my laptop and started reversing the things I'd put in motion months earlier. The flights I'd booked under Mom's name, gone. The villa deposit in Portugal, cancelled. The balance of the $9,400 I'd transferred to Gemma's joint honeymoon account, back in mine before midnight. I didn't write a note. No passive-aggressive message, no, since I'm not invited. I just clicked through each screen, logged out of the travel sites, closed the spreadsheets, and left everything as quietly as I'd built it. Then I opened the wedding group chat and scrolled. The last message from me was a link to a travel insurance form. No one had responded. I didn't say goodbye. I just left the group. By morning, the silence I'd kept for years had finally become visible. At first, I thought they wouldn't notice. Or if they did, they'd assume it was technical. I'd played the background role for so long, it was entirely plausible I'd quietly opt out without explanation. But by noon, my phone was buzzing like it was on fire. 39 missed calls. 12 voicemails. Dozens of texts, Gemma, Mom. One from Aaron that read simply, "What's going on?" as if he hadn't been sitting next to her when they made the decision to uninvite me. A few cousins messaged too, mostly vague attempts to play neutral. "Hey, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Let me know if you want to talk." They didn't ask what happened. Just wanted to make sure they were covered in case it turned into something public. The one message that landed differently came from my friend Nina. We'd worked together years ago and kept in touch mostly through voice notes and holiday cards. Her text was simple. What hurts more, being left out or being used? I didn't reply. I didn't have to. I just stared at the words for a long time, feeling that particular kind of ache that only comes when someone names something you hadn't been able to say out loud. I didn't go into work the next day. I said I had a migraine, which wasn't untrue. My whole body felt heavy, like it had been holding tension for too long and now didn't know what to do without it. I sat on the couch with a blanket over my legs, drinking tea I didn't finish and trying to decide if I was more embarrassed or more angry. The thing about betrayal in families is that it rarely happens all at once. It's layered, cumulative. You can explain each slight away on its own. But when you see them lined up together, it becomes undeniable. I kept replaying things I hadn't thought about in years. Like the time Gemma couldn't make rent in San Diego, and I wired her $1,200 without even asking why she needed it. Or the year she wanted to take the LSAT and asked if I could cover the prep course, $799. She'd pay me back, of course. She never did. The summers I'd babysit her dog for free while she jetted off to destination weddings and music festivals. I worked full-time. I didn't have the flexibility, but I made it work. Because she asked. And because I said yes every time. Our mom, too. When her car needed new brakes and she didn't have the savings, I put it on my credit card. When she hinted that her rent had gone up but didn't ask directly, I started sending her $250 each month, labeled groceries in the transfer so she wouldn't feel weird about it. She never brought it up again. Just started thanking me for keeping things smooth. I made myself small so other people could feel comfortable. And they mistook that for not needing space at all. A few days after the call, I finally spoke to someone about it, my friend Tessa, who's known me since college. We met for coffee, and I told her everything. Not dramatically, not looking for validation. I just laid it out, point by point, like a PowerPoint presentation with no commentary. She listened the whole way through, then leaned back in her chair and said, "I don't think they know who you are anymore." I shook my head. "I'm not sure they ever did." She paused. "So what now?" I didn't have a clean answer. I still don't. There wasn't some moral breakthrough or tidy emotional arc. Just a growing clarity. I thought about what Gemma had said, "We just think your energy isn't right for the day." And the worst part was, she was probably telling the truth. She really did believe that. Somewhere along the line, they decided I didn't match the aesthetic. That my presence would complicate the narrative. They wanted a curated version of family. And I didn't fit the color scheme. The Sunday before the wedding, I got an envelope in the mail. Thick, glossy, with gold script. A formal invitation. It was postmarked 2 days after they'd told me I wasn't welcome. Inside was a note from Mom, written in her neat cursive, "Erica, hoping we can put everything behind us. You're always family, and it would mean a lot if you were there. Love, Mom." There was no apology. No mention of what had been said. Just a vague, passive appeal to pretend none of it had happened. I didn't RSVP. I didn't attend. But I kept the envelope. Not out of sentimentality. Not as a keepsake. But as a receipt. For everything I'd given and everything they decided I didn't deserve in return. The week of the wedding came and went. I took a few days off work, went upstate, rented a small cabin I found online. I hiked, read, ate alone in silence. No notifications. No pressure. The night of the wedding, I got a single text from Aaron. "Wish you were here." Gemma does too. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put the phone face down on the table and went back to my book. I'd spent most of my life trying to earn my place in rooms I had already built. And I was done doing that. Not out of bitterness. But because the moment I stopped asking for entry, I realized I'd never needed their permission to begin with. I didn't go online. Didn't post anything. Didn't make a statement or drop a cryptic quote for attention. I just removed myself. Quietly. Completely. The wedding fund was gone. The bookings were canceled. The group chats were left. I turned off notifications for the entire weekend, muted their names, and deleted the wedding calendar from my phone. The kind of decision you don't unmake. The kind that says more in silence than any text could. By Monday morning, my phone had become something else entirely, a timeline of panic. 39 missed calls. Gemma. Mom. Aaron. A couple of aunts. One from Uncle Matt, who only ever calls to announce births or deaths. Dozens of texts that ranged from confused to condescending. One voicemail stood out. It was Gemma's voice, low and flat like she was trying to sound calm, but couldn't hide the edge beneath it. "We didn't think you'd take it like this. You're blowing it out of proportion. I mean, it's just one day. You could have said something instead of, like, vanishing." She didn't say she was sorry. just that I'd made a mess. That voicemail played in my head for days. I didn't respond. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to feel the unanswered space between us. I wanted all of them to. Not as punishment, but as clarity. For once, I wasn't going to soften the discomfort. I let them sit in the silence they created. A few days later, I got an email from Aaron. No subject line. No greeting. Just a paragraph. Look, I know emotions are high, but this has put Gemma under a lot of stress. People are asking questions. The flights, the villa, she's trying to explain it all, but it's making her look bad. Can you just talk to her? Get things back on track. That was the first time I realized what this really was. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about image. Control. They didn't want me back because they missed me. They wanted to manage the fallout. Smooth the story. I didn't reply. The following weekend was the rehearsal dinner. I knew the date by memory. I'd originally scheduled their airport transfer and reserved the tasting menu at a restaurant I'd picked based on Gemma's old Pinterest board. I watched the hours pass that night like a witness to a life I'd stepped away from. I made dinner, folded laundry, finished a novel. Nothing extraordinary. But in the middle of the night, I woke to a text from my mother. A photo of the family sitting at the rehearsal table, champagne in hand, smiling. Underneath it, she wrote, "There's still time to come." No apology. No accountability. Just the dangling offer to pretend nothing had happened. That they hadn't said the words they said. That I hadn't been erased. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet. It was the first time I felt what people mean when they talk about reclaiming power. Not loudly. Not with revenge. Just by not returning to the place that burned you. The wedding took place on a Sunday. I know that because I'd booked their return flights for the following Tuesday. The original itinerary was still in my inbox, a digital ghost of what I used to give without question. I spent that Sunday alone. Not sad. Not even angry anymore. Just watching from the shore while the ship I'd built sailed away with people who didn't care if I was on board. Later that evening, I got a message from my cousin Alyssa. A screenshot of a Facebook comment thread. Apparently someone had asked why I wasn't at the wedding. Gemma had replied, "Some people don't handle boundaries well." That was the moment the illusion really ended. Not just the family myth I'd believed in, but the idea that I could ever earn my place in a story that someone else kept rewriting. I never imagined this would be the turning point. I thought if there was ever a fracture, it would come after a fight. A screaming match. Years of built-up resentment finally cracking the surface. But it didn't. It came in soft voices and cold phrases. In quiet exclusion and selective memory. And when I finally walked away, it was without slamming a door. Just closing it. Once. I didn't tell my side to everyone. I didn't send out mass texts or gather witnesses. I just started living like I didn't need to prove anything anymore. That week, I had dinner with friends I hadn't seen in months. I accepted a project at work I'd been putting off. I bought a plane ticket to Lisbon for fall, a trip I'd originally scheduled for Gemma and Aaron, now mine alone. I booked a smaller place, closer to the water, with a rooftop view. I started sleeping better. I don't think they ever expected me to let go. They assumed I'd protest, maybe cry, then quietly show up again. That I'd keep paying, supporting, managing things from the background, just grateful to be included. They underestimated what happens when someone like me stops asking. They don't know it yet, but the dynamic has changed permanently. Not because I yelled. Not because I fought. But because I did nothing. And that was the loudest thing I've ever done. I watched from a distance as things quietly unraveled. I didn't reach out. I didn't ask how it went. I didn't look at their pages right away, but eventually, curiosity won. I opened Gemma's profile late one night, halfway through a cup of mint tea, and started scrolling. The first photo was of her and Aaron, standing under a floral arch, smiling like people who believed the worst was behind them. Her dress was simple but elegant. His tux was a little too tight across the shoulders. I looked for my mother in the group shots, and there she was, second row, leaning slightly to the left, smiling like someone who had managed to get through the weekend without a public meltdown. I recognized a few of the bridesmaids, and a few names I didn't expect, people Gemma hadn't been close to in years, but who looked thrilled to be on the guest list. What I noticed most was what wasn't there. No mention of me. Not even in the generic, "to everyone who made this day special" caption. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a curated version of events. Clean. Manageable. Pretty. 2 days later, she posted a story, white background, black text, nothing fancy. Some people can't handle other people's joy. And that's okay. We rise anyway. It stayed up for the full 24 hours. I didn't respond. I didn't screenshot it or send it to anyone. I just let it hang in the air like the petty ghost of a relationship that used to mean something. She'd always been good at weaponizing ambiguity. Just enough implication to claim innocence, just enough edge to land a hit. My cousin Ava texted me later that week. She had flown in from Seattle and was one of the few people who had noticed I was missing. "You okay?" she asked. I replied, "Yeah, just needed some space." She didn't pry. But 2 days later, she messaged again. Honestly, it felt weird without you. Like something was off and nobody wanted to say it. I think people were confused. Gemma kept saying it was just a mutual decision. I didn't correct her. What was the point? People hear what they want. And if they already believe you're the one who keeps things smooth, they'll struggle to imagine you walking away from the mess instead of cleaning it up. My mom didn't say anything for nearly a week. Then, out of nowhere, I got a forwarded email receipt. A last-minute flight booking. She'd paid triple the original fare for the same route I'd tried to schedule months earlier. There was no note attached. No explanation. But I could tell from the timestamp, it had been booked less than 48 hours before departure. Whatever plan they'd had for travel must have fallen through. The irony was almost funny. For years, I'd been the safety net. The backup plan. The silent hand making sure no one fell. And now, without me, things were slipping. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The consequences were already doing the talking. While they scrambled and spun their version of the story, I used the refunded money to go somewhere quiet. It wasn't a grand trip. Not the luxury honeymoon itinerary I'd originally designed. I didn't feel like seeing Lisbon or Cinque Terre or anywhere that might have felt like I was walking through someone else's vacation. Instead, I found a lakeside cabin 2 hours north. Off-grid. No Wi-Fi. Wood stove. A small porch with 2 chairs facing the water. It wasn't dramatic. Just still. I packed light. Books. A warm sweater. My journal. I didn't plan anything. I didn't check emails. I left my phone on airplane mode the whole week. No drama. Just peace. Every morning, I made tea and sat on the porch, watching the mist lift off the lake like it was peeling itself away from the past. There was a stillness there I didn't realize I needed. I hadn't been quiet with myself in a long time. I was always so busy being useful, helpful, responsible. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be unneeded. At night, I cooked small meals and read until my eyes got heavy. I slept through the night for the first time in months. No alarms. No late-night calls. No texts that started with, "Hey, quick favor." By the 4th day, I started thinking less about them. Not because the pain was gone, but because it no longer felt urgent. I stopped wondering if they were still trying to contact me. I stopped replaying what I could have said, how I could have handled it differently. That part of the story was over. The page had already turned. When I came back home, the world had gone on without me. Emails had piled up. A neighbor had collected my packages. Nothing had fallen apart. No one had needed saving. It was strangely reassuring. I went back to work. Back to the rhythm of my life. But something had shifted. The first week back, I said no to something out loud. Not in a polite, indirect way. Just no, I can't help with that. And I didn't apologize for it. The sky didn't fall. People adjusted. I started noticing how much I'd trained myself to say yes. How often I offered before being asked. How easily I absorbed other people's needs and called it being good. I started questioning that version of goodness. Who did it serve? Who did it protect? A few coworkers noticed the difference. "You seem calmer," one said. Like something let go. It had. Not them. Not exactly. But the idea that I owed them anything just because I always had. I didn't cut anyone off. I didn't write a final message or block anyone out of anger. I just stopped filling the space they left. I let the silence sit there. I let the absence of my effort become its own presence. My mom sent a text the second week of October. It was short. I hope we can talk soon. Your sister misses you. I stared at it for a while before responding. I needed to step back. That hasn't changed. But I'm okay. She didn't reply. And that was fine. The transformation wasn't in what I said. It was in what I no longer felt compelled to do. I wasn't scrambling to explain myself. I wasn't rushing to make it easier for them to look at me. I was just here. Still. Whole. And finally okay with being outside their frame. A month passed. I didn't keep count of the days, but my calendar did. There was a dinner I'd declined, a cousin's baby shower I didn't attend, a group thread I left unanswered. For once, it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like rest. Then, out of nowhere, Gemma texted me. No apology. No explanation. Just, can we talk? I stared at it for a while, unsure how to feel. Not angry. Not relieved. Just cautious. It was the first time she'd reached out directly since the call. No pretense. No defense. Just 4 words. I waited a day before responding. Sure. Coffee next week. We met at a place halfway between our apartments. A neutral cafe with decent lattes and quiet music. I got there first and chose a table in the corner, back against the wall. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired. Not in a dramatic, grief-stricken way, just softer around the edges. Less curated. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach all the way. She didn't hug me. I didn't stand up. We sat. She ordered tea, I stuck with coffee. For a minute, we didn't say anything. Then she took a breath and started. We made a mistake, she said. I know that. I didn't respond right away. I let her speak. It wasn't just about you, she continued. It was. I don't know. Everything felt like it was spiraling. Mom was stressed. Aaron kept saying we needed to keep things light. And I guess, somewhere in all of that, I stopped thinking clearly. She stirred her tea. Didn't look at me. Mom got in my head. She kept saying how tense things were between you two, and how you were already pulling back, and I believed her. I kept my voice even. You didn't ask me. She nodded slowly. I know. That was the mistake. There wasn't an apology exactly. Just that, we made a mistake. But I heard it anyway. In the way her voice faltered. In how she didn't rush to defend herself. She looked up. I thought you'd get over it, she said, almost to herself. I didn't think you'd actually disappear. I sipped my coffee. You didn't think I'd stop making it easy. She didn't deny it. We sat in the quiet for a while. I'm not here to win you back, she said finally. I just realized I don't like who I was. How I let people talk about you. How I didn't push back when I should have. I nodded once. It wasn't a revelation. It was just the truth. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But that doesn't mean everything resets. She swallowed hard. Okay. If you want a relationship, I said, it has to be different. From scratch. No more assumptions. No more calling me when you need something and forgetting me when you don't. I know. It means asking how I'm doing. It means showing up when nothing's wrong. It means giving, not just taking. She nodded again. And I need to know you're doing it because you want to, not because you feel guilty. Or because Mom told you to fix it. Her voice was quieter now. I do want to. I miss you. I looked at her for a long time, trying to decide whether that was true. It was hard to tell. Regret has a way of shaping itself into anything you want to see. But I didn't feel manipulated. Not this time. Just seen a little. I'm not making space for people who can't make space for me, I said. I don't have room for that anymore. You shouldn't, she said. We finished our drinks. I didn't offer to meet again. She didn't ask. But when we stood to leave, she hesitated for a second. Then reached out, not for a hug, but a gentle touch on my arm. Not possessive. Not performative. Just acknowledgement. I'll do better, she said. I hope so, I replied. And I meant it. I didn't walk away feeling healed. I didn't feel closer. But I did feel lighter. Because for the first time, I hadn't tried to rescue the relationship. I just let it stand on its own. And it was still standing. Sort of. It's been 8 months. I didn't mark the date on the calendar, but I noticed when it passed. Quietly. No incident. No phone call. Just a regular Thursday. I was making dinner, grilled vegetables, a glass of wine, and I realized, almost offhandedly, that the wedding had happened exactly 8 months ago. I didn't feel anything. No sting. No ache. Just a strange sense of distance. Like it belonged to someone else's life. My mom and I still speak. Not often and not deeply. The conversations are short. Weather, health, the occasional question about someone's birthday. She never brings up the wedding. I don't either. There's a politeness to our interactions now, almost like we're neighbors who used to be close, but now just wave from across the street. It's not cold. Just neutral. And that's fine. Gemma and I have met for coffee twice since the first time. No big leaps. No emotional monologues. Just effort. She texts now and then, not just when she needs something, but with little things. A funny video, a recipe, a photo of her cat doing something ridiculous. I don't overanalyze it. I don't look for hidden motives. I just take it as it is. A gesture. She hasn't said, "I'm sorry" outright. But she's shown up. And for now, that's enough. The biggest change isn't in them. It's in me. I'm calmer. Clearer. I don't rush to fill silences anymore. I don't scan every interaction for the emotional undercurrent I'm supposed to fix. I don't rehearse boundaries in my head before I say them out loud. I just say them. And when they're met with discomfort or pushback, I let that be their problem. I'm not hard. I'm not bitter. I still care about people. I still show up. But I've stopped trying to earn affection by over-delivering. I've stopped translating love into logistics. I've also stopped explaining myself. That might be the biggest shift. For most of my life, I've been the kind of person who offers context. Who softens the no. Who outlines her reasons like a closing argument, just to make sure no one feels wronged. But the thing is, people who respect you don't need that much explanation. And people who don't? They're not listening anyway. So now, I just say the thing. And let it land however it lands. It's strange how quickly that becomes normal. How, once you stop managing other people's reactions, you realize how much time you've been wasting. These days, I wake up lighter. I work out more. I take weekends seriously. I spend time with people who don't drain me. I've started cooking again, real cooking, not just assembling food to keep going. I read before bed. I sleep better. I even booked another trip, this time to Scotland. Just me, a cabin, and a plan to do absolutely nothing productive. The $9,400 I once set aside for Gemma's honeymoon? I never touched it after the lake trip. It stayed in savings for months. Recently, I used part of it for a course I'd been eyeing for over a year. Not a job thing, just something for me. And the rest is still there, quietly waiting. Not earmarked for someone else. Not held hostage by guilt. Just mine. Every now and then, I catch myself thinking about the version of me from a year ago. The one who made spreadsheets for other people's vacations. Who remembered everyone's food allergies. Who memorized flight numbers for trips she wasn't even going on. I don't judge her. She meant well. She was just trying to keep things together. But I also don't want to be her again. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Being needed feels good. But being respected? That changes everything. Boundaries don't make you cruel. They make you free. Free from the constant recalculating. Free from the emotional debt cycle. Free from the expectation that love means always saying yes. I used to think saying no meant shutting people out. Now I know it just means I'm finally making room for the relationships that can hold the truth without breaking. My family is still my family. That hasn't changed. But I no longer place them at the center of my decisions. I no longer build my life around their comfort. And honestly, they're adjusting. Maybe a little slowly, maybe not always gracefully. But they're learning. Gemma doesn't ask for big things anymore. But when she does ask, she asks gently. And if I say I can't, she doesn't punish me with silence. That's new. My mom still stumbles. Sometimes she tries to hint her way back into the role she used to hold, subtle guilt, long pauses, emotional shorthand. I don't respond to it anymore. I answer the question she actually asked and leave the rest untouched. I think she notices, but she doesn't push. That, too, is progress. Some things aren't meant to go back to how they were. Some things shouldn't. The legacy of all this isn't that I lost people. It's that I finally stopped losing myself to keep them. I used to think the most loving thing I could do was stay. Now I know it's learning when to walk away without slamming the door. Just walking. Quietly. Calmly. Knowing that your absence might teach them something your presence never could. And sometimes, the real honeymoon? It's what happens after you stop paying for everyone else's happiness and start choosing your own. If you've ever had to walk away from people you thought would always be in your corner, I want to hear about it. What was your breaking point? Did they ever try to make it right? Drop your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if this hit home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. More real stories like this are coming. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary.